Thank you.
Thank you. I will not be as brief as our controller. It really is an honor to be with you tonight and to receive this award in Wylie's name and to sit here and watch John Chung receive the award in Dick O'Neill's name. In '95, Howard Adler, Dick O'Neill, and Wylie convinced me to get involved with the DFOC. And as Wylie talked about, one of our great projects together was making sure that we finally got another Democratic congressional member for Orange County. We were successful in doing that, and it's important to reflect on that because we have an opportunity to expand on our Democratic congressional delegation here in Orange County, and together, if we create the same sort of focus that we did in '96, I'm sure we'll be successful. It's wonderful to have candidates like Suki and Senator Lowenthal, who's been such a tremendous leader in the legislature. And I think if you talk to Jose Solorio or if you talk to Lou Correa, they could tell you that, well, Alan didn't represent Orange County before. He's always been a great partner for Orange County's interest in the way that he's approached his work in the legislature. Now, when you listen to the controller talk about his needs to travel back and meet with Wall Street leaders, it reinforces the fact that we're truly in very difficult times as a state. And as difficult as the times are, there are some positive signs that we should focus on as well. But there's a long way to go before we reach the prosperity that California deserves. We've just added a few thousand jobs to our economy over the last few months, and as slow as that growth has been, it's true that California is actually leading the country in terms of new job creation. The efforts that the legislature and the governor were able to achieve this past year have been significant in turning around how the market looks at California. For the first time in many, many years, we actually saw an improved outlook with respect to California. Now, why is that important? It impacts our ability to sell bonds and what rates were charged. And one of the great challenges for us is how much debt we carry as a state, debt that has been left over from our previous governor, and debt that is consuming a greater and greater proportion of our actual budget. But what is even more remarkable is the fact that we achieved this positive transformation in the same year that our representatives in Washington, D.C. struggled so long to deal with the debt ceiling that we saw our national creditworthiness go down in an unprecedented way. So the contrast between what was difficult to get done in Washington, D.C. and what was able to get done here in California is really monumental. At the same time, we in the legislature have passed a few measures to help increase our ability to bring jobs back to the state, because we know that with millions of Californians out of work and millions more underemployed, struggling to get by, our number one focus has to get people back to work. We've done it by looking at creative ways to incentivize green manufacturing and green development in the state of California, and that's brought thousands of jobs. We've done it by trying to be more creative and more aggressive in the way in which we review projects that are before us. So in my district, we were able to expedite the reviews for a football stadium that will bring 23,000 jobs to the region on the front end, but have a huge multiplier effect beyond that. And then it laid the foundation for broader legislation to look at ways that we can expedite review without undermining any of the core values that we have in terms of protecting our environment, proving that California can be the place where we could be at the cutting edge of environmental protection, environmental green technology, and still be a better and better place in which to do business. And I authored a bill, AB 29, which created the Governor's Office of Economic Development so that we could stop looking at economic development from a city-by-city perspective and figure out creative ways that we as a state could fight for the types of job creation that are so essential in a cooperative rather than competitive way. These bills lay the foundation for the work that we in the legislature will continue this year to get businesses up and running and get people back in good quality, well-paying jobs in California. We know that next year is going to be difficult for Democrats, not only across the state, but across the country as we gear up for an election cycle unlike any we've ever seen before. Between redistricting and top two primaries, every seat in California now has the potential of being a competitive seat, to say nothing of the fact that we know we're going to have to rededicate ourselves to the effort of re-electing Senator Dianne Feinstein and ensuring the re-election of our president. We're going to engage in these races forcefully, as we always do. Our grassroots Democrats will knock on doors, make phone calls that will help ensure victory on Election Day. But we have a lot of work to do between now and then. I want to take a moment to talk not just about where we're going to have to fight, but more importantly, about why we fight. In an era of unprecedented challenge, where so many Californians are struggling every single day just to survive, there has never been a more important moment for us to take stock of why, in fact, we're Democrats. With so many millions of Californians out of work, we need to remind ourselves that Californians are fighting for Democrats in California are fighting for the kinds of quality, decent jobs that will allow people to provide for their families. With students being clubbed and pepper sprayed for peacefully voicing their frustrations, we need to remind ourselves that it was Democrats who built the world-class system of higher education that made California the shining state that it is, and that we believe that every person in our state deserves access to that quality higher education if they're willing to work for it. We want everybody to succeed, and we want to recognize our moral obligation to ensure that they have that opportunity to succeed. We're facing challenges unprecedented since the days of the Great Depression. And in the coming campaign, we must be guided by the spirit of hope and optimism and determination of Franklin Roosevelt that made our party what it is. We Democrats are guardians of a legacy that FDR built. We stand for the promise of opportunity for all people. That legacy says that no matter who you are or where you come from, you deserve the opportunity to succeed and grow and thrive. And now more than ever, with a legacy threatened, we need to remind ourselves that we fight for people who don't have fancy lobbyists or lawyers or consultants to advocate for their interests. We fight for people who are working long hours in tough jobs to provide for their families. As an assembly member, I have many of those folks in my district. For them, making ends meet is a constant soul-aching battle. For them, what seems like a little setback can really be a huge disaster. And we must remind ourselves, as I know my colleagues do, every day that our duty, first and foremost, is to fight for them. They sent us to Sacramento with the expectation that they'll be the first people that we think of in the morning and the last people we think of before we go to bed. They don't expect us to solve their problems for them. They expect us to fight for them, for the changes that will let them lift themselves up with dignity and courage and hard work. We're the party that has to stand up in those fights. We're the party that offers them hope in the future. And as we move forward to 2012, we will have to return to our party's roots and rekindle that spirit embodied in FDR. In his legendary first 100 days, he gave a very simple order to his government. It was this: try anything, try everything, but above all, do something to give people hope. If it works, then we've succeeded. And if it doesn't work, then we try something else. That needs to be the spirit that animates our efforts as we move into this next year. for millions of Californians for whom simply surviving is an ordeal, a daunting daily challenge. We need to be that voice that offers them hope and empowerment. We cannot be afraid of the challenges. We can't be afraid of defeat. The only thing we should fear is looking into the eyes of the men and women we fight for and having to say, I'm sorry, we could have done more. If we make that our guiding spirit, then we can't lose. When we knock on doors, it won't be to ask voters for their vote. It'll be to offer them an opportunity to be part of a hopeful, positive vision that will deliver this country from a long, hard winter. In 1936, FDR was running for re-election, and the Tea Party of his day, the Liberty League, thought that they were going to win for certain. They called FDR a socialist. They attacked the New Deal as creeping totalitarianism. They vilified him personally, and they vilified everyone who stood with him as un-American. Sound familiar? Well, FDR took the long view, and he recognized that weathering the scathing viciousness of his opponents was nothing compared to the struggles of the average American trying to weather the cruel, merciless logic of Wall Street's bottom line. He said to Democrats convening in Philadelphia the following words, and I believe they must be the marching orders from this moment until the polls close next November. He said, "It is a sobering thing to be a servant of this great cause. We try in our daily work to remember that the cause belongs not to us, but to the people. Government can err. Presidents do make mistakes. But better the occasional faults of a government that lives in the spirit of charity than the consistent omissions of a government frozen in the ice of its own indifference." Now, he followed that with other lines that we hear repeated more often. He said, "There is a mysterious cycle in human events. To some generations, much is given. Of other generations, much is expected. This generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny." These are powerful words. We must be aggressive, tenacious, fearless, and proud of what we stand for as Democrats. And we must be prouder still that we're leading America and California back to peace and prosperity and opportunity for all of our people. This is a moment when the spirit, the conviction, and the energy of our party never has been needed more, and we must rise to the challenge and meet it triumphantly. Thank you.